Welcome to Being Humankind with your hosts Brian, Mike, and Neely. We explore what it means to be human in a time of disconnection.
What do you think is the most beautiful thing about you?
Maybe that I'm open to change the way I think. So a long time ago, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, I believed in things like the death penalty. And I don't today. I found myself changing viewpoints on a lot of things as we get older. My mom always tells me that it's like, once you have kids, everything changes. My mom doesn't sound like that. But I think having the ability to change my mind, and then I'm conscious that I do it often. Sometimes, I'll share an article on Facebook, and somebody will, give me some criticism about why that article was terrible. And then I'm like, I don't immediately go, screw you, pal. I go, hey, show me a link or whatever, right? And I'll go research, and my opinions change. I'm able to be fluid. I think so. If I love anything about myself, it's just that I love that I'm a learner. That a lot of people don't have that drive to want to know. But I think it also speaks to a minor accomplishment in that um, like I'm mindful enough to know that I don't know, and that ultimately, compared to, I mean, mathematically, 97% of other people in any given category of anything, I'm the idiot. So it's like sport nutrition today. In the 70s and into the 80s, sport players would hit the field, and in the off season they had regular jobs, and now they're doing their sport all the time. And if they want somebody to throw 100 yards, they have specific exercises through scientific inquiry and process that say, if you do this 10 times a day, and you do it and you increment this much, and you do this and you pivot just a little bit more this way, that's it. You'll hit it every time. And they know this because science, right? The research happens. And so you can never, and so what we have today in like pro sports is this idea of not two teams with intrinsic skill, but two teams that have athleticism backed by the better science, the better play, the better whatever. And so no matter how good I get at anything, I know that somebody out there is killing it somewhere, doing the best they can, that makes everything else, pale in comparison. And sometimes that's strange too, because then you think, well, it's like I played guitar for 20 years, and sometimes somebody will send me a clip of some like 10-year-old just shredding. And I'm like, I'm done. I'm not going to ever play again. Because why? But so there's a trap there too. So yeah, back to the beginning. I think the one of the things, if I love something about myself, it's that I'm open to learn.
You call that a minor accomplishment, yet you're willing to learn anything and listen to anyone's side of, even if it's something you completely disagree with or have had disagreed with in the past, when there are so many people out there that will just shut anything down. And that is so, I mean, that's so open-minded. And there's so few people out there that are like that.
I think that's true, and I think where I come from with that is I hate these words because they sometimes come off as people don't always understand them, and they're not used appropriately. But the words objective and subjective, because inherently everybody wants to say subjective opinions are terrible, but a subjective mass opinion is the objective truth. And so, even though there technically isn't an objective truth, we have so many people out there that are seeing things differently. I never, ever, ever, ever in my life would have thought that I would quote Mitch McConnell. But he said the other day something like, two different sides who operate under two different sets of truth and ultimate realities, or something. And I thought, that is so interesting that you can have people that have a completely different view of what the rest of us think is solid reality. But I want to listen to them because there's got to be a reason why they feel a certain way. And maybe there's a hope that you could say, have you thought about this? How do you think this is? How do you think this is? And I think I dealt with this a lot over the last several years, specifically with race relations in the United States. I grew up in an Italian immigrant home, and Italians are notoriously racist. I don't, sorry to my Italian friends and brothers. I shouldn't say new Italian. I mean, like, current generations, they move beyond, thoughts of differing, skin colors or whatever. But the house I grew up in is old school Italians, and they really slur all the time. And I think growing up in that's in my head, right? Like, I can remember being 17 and being at like an ATM and a black man walking up behind me and me thinking, like, I have to be on high alert. Why did I think that way? Like, I never in a million years should that be a thing. But being able to recognize those kinds of patterns and those kind of thinking fights that away. And so that's not a thought I have anymore, obviously. But it goes along. The reason I bring it up is because it's like when people say, I don't have white privilege. I didn't have white privilege. And so that's an interesting concept, that people would deny that they have a upper hand that some folks didn't have. And so I think if you're conscious and you actually think about situations that Black people have faced in America, or Asians or whatever, if you've taken some of their more I shouldn't even say more. If you've taken some of their situations and you read about them and the way their subjective opinion about what happened affected them, and you ask yourself, have you ever dealt with anything like that? And the answer is no. And not having that experience or that weight or that anchor on you has given you a freedom that some people don't have. And so to recognize those kinds of things in myself, right? You would say that I want to listen to other people who might have a differing opinion or this objective, this other reality that they live in, so that you could understand why some people have an aversion or a dissonance to whatever the issue is. You know, I'm obviously thinking a lot about this in a certain light just because of the things that happened, you know, in the US last week. But I mean, I think a lot of it, that alternate movement that moved in on the Capitol is just a placeholder or like an archetype for the the kind of people who are out there. And I don't know that my uh, like I'm not trying to beat anybody down with logic or say that their opinion or their feelings don't matter, but like it's things like your, you know, I mean, in all seriousness, it comes down to people that think, you know, they have this QAnon, the the government is run by lizards like David Icke, tinfoil hat wearing Alex Jones, the whole like gay frogs thing or whatever the heck this guy's all about, all the while fueling conspiracy, that the COVID vaccine is a way to control people, that shutting down businesses is a way to control people, or like it is a science fiction dystopian reality that they believe is true and that we're the sheep. And I don't know, maybe those kind of people have always been around, but they didn't have a global voice or something. But I think to listen to all sides, like even those people, I want to listen to because I'm interested in why. Like, why do you think that?
Kind of wonder sometimes, right? If is it a clean like if there was a clean slate, that whole idea of a clean slate of like you're born into this set of circumstances. So if you were born in to that person's set of circumstances, would you come out exactly the same, or would you have the free will to be the person you are today?
Yeah, I mean, that just brings up a whole nother slew of questions. Is that like I have a family member who is 1 year younger than me, is a massive success where he works. And I'm relatively certain he doesn't know who he is. I know who he is. But I've also watched him change who he is several times, which is why I know he doesn't know who he is. Yeah. And I certainly see in him today things that harken back to how he grew up and his dad. So, yeah, right? It's not, there's an old philosophical, psychological argument that people are either born the way they are or society makes them who they are. And I think people can be born with abnormalities in brain function and the ability to release and recapture chemicals in your system that change your mood or the way you experience anxiety, reality. But let's be honest. I mean, where you grow up determines a lot about you and your opportunities in life. Like I don't like the generalities of, boomers or zennials or Gen X. Because if you really think about it has a lot more to do with socioeconomic status than the decade you were born in. I mean, the baby boomers have like people who both love Vietnam and hate Vietnam. So I don't know. Humans love to categorize everything, don't we?
Mm.
Yep.